This is the third part of our simple store app. We have already done the first and the second part, and let us see what we intend to do in the third part. So this first step in the third part is edit and delete. So where we were showing the products, we want to show buttons for delete and edit. In the case of edit, ensure that the form is pre-populated. So the values we want to edit, the product we want to edit, we want to show those values as pre-populated. Also use the add a product form to avoid duplications of form. So for the edit, the objective is to use the same form that we used for add a product, so that we're not creating and managing two separate forms. So let us see how to do it. So this is the code we had at the end of the second part, and this is the output for it. So we had the show products, we had the add a product form, and now what we want to do is show two buttons here for edit and delete. So the first step we will do is add the buttons for edit and delete. So let us go to the show products table, and here we will just add the buttons. So I will just adjust the columns, and here we would say button. Let me just copy the button code from the form so that we can get it. So in our form we had the button. Let me just so we have the first button and we would have the second button. So these are the two buttons we want to show. So let us say the first button we want to show is edit, and the second button we want to show is delete, and the edit button has say secondary, and these are small buttons, so I'll use BT and SM. And on the click of it, let us just call edit product and delete product. Now what we also need here is to give us the product we want to delete. So we would need the index. So in the map, let us add that in our function. So let's make it pr comma index. So we will pass the index here. So let's just pass index so that we know which is the product B for which we are doing the edit and the delete. Similarly, let's in the header, let's just add another column and align the length of it. And this is an empty column and we don't need a on click also on it. So this should show those buttons. So let us test this code. So we get these two buttons. So we're getting the edit and the delete buttons. Now what do we need to do? We need to implement these functions edit product and delete product. So let's go ahead and do that. So function, let's say start with delete product, and we had the index. So now what can we do? We can just use splice. So products dot splice index comma 1. So we have removed this product, we have deleted it. And what do we need to do? We'll just call show products. So this should work. Let's test it. Show products. Let me delete dairy milk, and you can see we have been, this is working fine. Good. Next, what we want to do is implement edit product. So again, we are getting the index. Now, what all would we need to do for the edit product? We will need to show the form. So let us go ahead and make certain changes to the forms first. So if I go to the form, so here in the form, wherever we are making these, so these are our helper functions: make text field, make radius, make drop down, make checkbox. They're not taking the current value. So first change let's make is let's supply them a current value so that it gets shown with the value. So let's call it, so in text field it is the value, in radius it's the value, its drop down is again, let's call it say selected value, and in we are giving a value checked. So let's implement that. So in a make text field we have value, and if it is not given in, let's give it a empty string. So let us display the value here. So we have placeholder. After the placeholder we can say value is equal to, so this would display the value for the text field. So similarly for the radius, say we get the value. Now what do we do with that value? In the option, let's create a field. So let's call it radio value. Let checked equal to, if radio value is equal to the value in this option, then checked should be checked, otherwise checked would be an empty string. And now here we can just go ahead and add check. So if this value was the radio value was the value of this radio, so it will get checked, otherwise it will remain, the checked will remain an empty string. Next, what do we need to do? We need to get it into the drop down. So let's call it say selected value. Again, selected value is an empty string. We could in the radio value also make it an empty string as a default value. Now what do we need to show here? In the option if, so let us say let selected equal to, if opt is equal to selected value, then it should be selected, otherwise it's an empty string. So now that we have it, we can now add it to our option. And now if this option had been selected, it will come as selected here. Next, what we need to do is in the header also correct it for selected. So I will define a string, say let selected header. Now if selected value, if the selected value is an empty string or it's undefined, then we want this to be selected. So if selected value is truthy, that means we are given it an empty string because some value had been selected. And if it is not truthy, we have given it the string selected, which means that the header should be selected. And now here we can put in the value selected header. So this should show that value. And in the case of checkbox, what did we put in the case? The field checked. Now what do we need to do? We can say let c1 equal to, if checked is true, then it should be checked, otherwise it should be an empty string. And now in the checkbox we can just add C1. So this should also handle the checkbox. So now in our form we have provided the values. So now we need these values while making the form. So let's go back to our edit. Let us say we need to know whether we are in the form for an edit or an add, and we would need to know the product that or the details that we want to do. So let us say we define a variable edit index and make it equal to index here. So I have defined a variable top, let edit index equal to -1. -1 means it cannot be the index of the array of products, so it means we are not editing it. And let me also define, say, my product, the current product being used as a JSON. So it's an empty JSON initially. Now what we can do in the edit product, we can say edit index is equal to index, and we can say my product is equal to products and the index. So now that we have gotten the products, we can just show add product form. So we can call it, which will now show that form. So now if we go to the form again, now we need these values to be called here. So let's now define these values. So let's use object destructuring. And where will we pick them on? We'll pick them from my product. So we have product, then we have price, discount, supplier, and delivery. And this is equal to my product. Now we know, because my product initially is an empty JSON with no fields. So let's provide default values. So product is an empty string, price is an empty string, discount is an empty string, supplier is an empty string, and delivery initially is false. So now that we have created this, there is a slight error we did. We missed out the first text field. So let us provide its parameter first. So that parameter would be product. For this one text field, it is price. For the radios, the value should be discount. For drop down, it is supplier. That's the value. And for checked, it is delivery. So this should provide all the forms. So show products. Now if I click on edit, 139, I get an error. 139. Let's correct it. Show products, edit. We get all the values. Pepsi 25, the discount is none, Bob, and delivery. Let's test it for something else. Pepsi 25, discount is 0, Bob, and delivery is true. Let's test it for Maggie. Maggie 15, 5%, ABC, delivery is checked, which is perfectly fine. Let's check for Nescafe. So delivery is not checked and all the values are fine. So just to make it clearer, let's add a header to it. So let me say let str is equal to h3 class is equal to text center. And we want to show here either add a product or edit product details. So depending upon what we are trying to do. So let me create a string before that. Let title equal to. So how do we know? We will know it from the edit index. So edit index greater than equal to 0. It means that we are editing. So edit product details. Otherwise it is add a product. And let's display it. So we will just add plus title plus slash h3, and this will become str plus equals. Let's test it. So this becomes add a product, which is perfectly fine. If I go and edit it, it becomes edit product details. Next, we need to handle the submit product. So let's go to the submit product. So in the submit product, we will not always be pushing it. So we can say edit index greater than equal to 0 means it's a edit. Then what would happen? Products edit index is equal to PR. Otherwise, we will just go and push the product. And because now this has been successfully pushed, what we should do is we should go to show products and do it. In the show products, I will just take care of one more thing, which is I will put the edit index back to -1. So the show product would have come with the edit index having some value. And the other is I will make the my product as an empty JSON. So the moment this gets called, it means this has been cleaned up. Let's test it. So I have my show products. I have my add a product. Let's start by testing add a product. PR001, say 22, 5%, James. So these values have come fine. Let me try and edit this product. So yeah, I get all the product details. Let's make the discount to 2% and ABC Limited. So this is fine. Let's add delivery. So that's become true. Let's change the price to 25. So that's also working fine. And product to. So this is working fine. Let's test the delete, and delete is also working fine. So we have now successfully added the edit and the delete functionality. Let's go to the next step, the last and final step, which is form validation. When the submit button is clicked, validate the form to check the values and display requisite error messages if some of the form values are incorrect. So suppose we are on add a product and we want name to be mandatory, say price to be mandatory, discount to be mandatorily chosen, and the supplier to be chosen. So these four fields are mandatory. We want them to be given all the time. So when the submit button is clicked, we want to check those values. The second thing we want to do is if those values are incorrect, we want to show error messages here. So how would we do that? So the first thing we need to do is when the submit product is clicked, we should be able to validate that all the values are there. So here at this point, we have the entire product setup in PR. So let us create, say, a function validate PR. And validate PR should return true or false whether the values are valid. And what we can do if validate PR, then we can go into these two paths, which is this is working fine, which means, and if the validation has failed, else what should we do? We should just remain on the same form, which is then we should show add product form. So this is what we should implement. So let us now define this function validate. So function validate, and it will take the on PR and it will now check whether the values are correct or not. So the values will be for product, price, discount, and supplier. So we do not want them to be, say, empty values. So before doing that, what we will also do is we need a place for these errors to be stored. So let me create a JSON errors and make it an empty JSON. Now in validate.pr, I can say errors.product. So this field should have the value. Either it should be empty. So what do we want? Either it's a empty string. When should it be an empty string? When there is no error. Or it should have the error message. So this is the purpose of this field. So either this field is absent, so initially errors is an empty JSON object, or it should be an empty string if there is no error. And if there is some string, some text in it, it means that is the error message. So we can say errors.product is pr.product. So if pr.product is truthy, it means this string is not an empty string or undefined. Then let's say errors.product is an empty string. Otherwise, we should say product name is mandatory. So we get this error message which has been set up for us. And then while we are displaying the form, we can now use the errors JSON object to display that. So that we will do after we have set this up. Similarly, I can say errors dot price is equal to, we want to check pr dot price and we want it to say have a non-zero value. So if this value is truthy, then let's make it an empty string. Otherwise, say price, enter the correct price. So remember, these validations we are using here are very, very basic and simple to just explain how we are validating. You can build in the comprehensive logics that you would want to make these validations better. Similarly, we have errors.discount. Now, if pr.discount is truthy, it means we selected that radio button, so we don't need it. Otherwise, we should need choose the discount. And we want the supplier, so errors dot supplier is equal to pr dot supplier. Now if pr dot supplier is truthy, it means we don't have an error here. Otherwise, we want to say select the supplier. That's the error message say we want to show. So again, why is it truthy? Because remember, even in our default value what we had used, if we go back to our drop down, the value for the header was an empty string. So if you use some other values, then obviously you will need to change your validate function accordingly. Now once we have all our errors set up, these are our only 4 kinds of errors we want to do, so all of them have been there. Now how do we say whether the object was valid or not? We can say return not of errors dot product or errors dot price or errors dot discount or errors dot supplier. So if any of these values, errors dot products, errors dot price, this was truthy, if any one of them was truthy, then this not will return, this or will return a true, and hence truthy value, and hence the not will become a false, which means it did not validate. If all of them are falsy, that means the validate, this will return a falsy value, which means the not of it will return a truthy. And if we go back, if this returns truthy, it means we have gotten a right product. We can go ahead and do it. So now we have the errors object set up in our validate. Now what do we need to do? We need to display it here. So before that, what I will do is, let's just check whether this part is working fine. So I'll just do a console.log errors, and let's see how do we test it. So here I have my add a product. Now if I click on submit, you can see I'm getting this. So my errors object is getting printed on the console. So all my 4 have been set up. Let's enter the name, say PR001. You can see product, the error message is an empty string. Let me enter the price. Now there is another problem that is happening, that these values are not sticking around. So whenever I'm clicking the submit, I'm losing the values in my product. So how do I ensure that my values in my product remain sticky? So before showing add product form, I can just say my product is equal to PR. If I do that, then my values would start to stick. So let's test it again. If I go to add a product, click submit, I get all the error messages. Now let me add PR001. Now the first thing, the value is sticking. Why? Because when we said my product is equal to PR, so in that my product we are using in the form to populate those values. So the object has PR has been used to set it up, although it was invalid, so we did not process the form. And you can see the price has the error message. Now if I enter the, let me clear the console first. Now if I enter the price, then we are just getting 2 error messages for discount and supplier. If I choose the supplier at the discount, then I don't get an error message here. If I choose the supplier, I don't get an error message. And because of that validation, the object, because it was valid, has been successfully added. So this part is working fine. Now what we need to do also is now display these error messages. So where will we need to display those error messages? So let's go back to our form, show form. So we have the error messages here. So now while we are making that product, we can also give it its error value. So we can say errors dot product is passed here, because we are showing the errors dot product. Similarly, here we are showing errors dot price. In radio, for the discount, we have errors dot discount. For the drop down, we are showing, we have errors dot supply. And for this checkbox, we did not have it, so we're not adding it right now. You could go ahead and do it. So let's start with the first one, the errors dot product, which we are adding to the text field. So let's call it, we have this error message here coming in. And if it's not provided, it's an empty string. So what we can do here is, after we have put in the input, I can just go ahead and say str plus equal to error. If error is truthy, which means it had an error message, I need to display it. I can say span class is equal to danger. What is the message I want to show? The error message. So I can show that. Let's go ahead and test it for the text field. 159, I get an error. We forgot to give the condition, so let's do that. Add a product. My product name is empty, so I get product name is mandatory. This should have been, I gave a wrong class, so let's test it. So I get product name is mandatory and enter the correct price. So both of them were working on text field, so we have shown the text field. Now if I enter the product, say product 1, and click on submit, see this message has gone away. So this is working fine. Next, what do we need to do? We need to show it for the radio. So again, same way, it's getting a new parameter error. Now, once we get the error, what do we need to show? We can say str plus equals. Again, the same thing we can do. Now, notice because this check, the radios were inline, so I will just add a line break and show it. Let's test it out. Add a product. So I get a choose a discount everywhere. Why did I get it? Because I added it at the wrong position. I added it in the map. So let me cut it. It should have been added after all the radios had been displayed. Let's test it again. Add a product. str is not defined. This should have been s1. Let's test it. Add a product. So choose the discount. So we're getting the error message for the discount also. Now what is left is the drop down. So let's give it a error. Now we can say here, we can just put in the same line that we have been using. We don't want a break here, and let's show it for a minute. Let me. So we get all the error messages. Product name is mandatory. Enter the correct price. Choose the discount. Select the supplier. If I select the supplier error message is gone. If I put in a discount, the discount error message is gone. The price error is gone, and let's call it say product 11, and we get the product 11 in. Now if I edit it, I have gotten all my values back in. Let's make it say 2% and submit. The product is gone in, and I can continue to do it exactly this way. Even in the edit, if I remove the price, it shows me that. So I cannot do that. So the validation is working perfectly fine. So this is the basic app that we were looking to build. There is more functionality that you can add, and in the description there will be links of videos of demos of these apps and some explanation that you can do for your own. I would seriously strongly suggest that you watch those videos also shared in the description and try and implement them on your own. Once you've done that, your confidence would grow, your knowledge would grow, and these concepts will become really clear.